Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching in the world. My name is Sean Driver, and this is the sixth installment of Do We Hate Ya? A segment where we go through all of the teams in League Two and try to analyze who are you, where are you, do we like you, do we hate you? And so for Bradford City, even though it's a League Cup game, you're in League Two, so let's do this early and let's get into it. Welcome to the Red Horde. So Bradford AFC, you're up. The Bantams, Attendance FC, located in Bradford City, West Yorkshire, subdivision of Leeds, formerly the wool capital of the world with a population of 366,187. Stadium, Valley Parade, opened up in 1886. 25,136 is the current capacity, and last season there was an average of 17,767 who made it way through the gates at Valley Parade. Distance away from the racecourse, 90 miles, 145 kilometers, and if you're going to drive that, at 1 hour and 35 minutes. They've got a turnover, a large turnover, $7,096,690. That's from Company's House. That's not from their records because for whatever reason, there's not a connection between them. They're a little bit off by about 300,000 quid. I'm not going to look into why. It doesn't matter for the purposes of this review. But now you get maybe why they're called Attendance FC. They led League Two last year. They've got a large stadium to put seats in, and they have a passionate fan base. I will give them credit for the passion. Bradford has active fans. I will say during the 3 months of the off season and the start of the year, it was Bradford fans that were probably the most annoying on Twitter and Facebook groups as far as the criticisms thrown towards Wrexham and their Hollywood owners. So not a lot of love personally for Bradford, but I'm going to give respect to the club and to the fans just to make the needle not sway too far given our superstition and how things have turned out watching those watch parties, which will be there for this one and for the Bradford one, but we're going to be audio only with no other way to connect it. So it might be an odd one of just everybody sort of guiding each other blind, but it is what it is. Looking then to the history of Bradford, formed in 1903, they were placed in the EFL second division and they made it up to the first division in 1907-08. And you will see with Bradford that their history has been ups and downs and ups and downs again. And so they made the Premier League, or the top Premier League, it wasn't called that then, the top tier in 1907-08. And then they started the tumble down, ultimately hitting the fourth tier in 1961-1962. And before they had their rise and their ascension, there were actually 3 seasons where they fit into the relegation zone in the bottom of the Football League. But at that time, there wasn't automatic relegation into the National League or outside of the EFL. There was an election process, and they were able to put their name forward to the rest of the EFL, and they were supported in continuing their journey. So very fortunate there that they didn't have to toil through the 5th tier as teams more currently, and like Wrexham, have had to. They did start their ascension and their climb back up and made it to the Premier League in 1999 before starting to fall back down again to where they are. This is now their 4th season in the 4th tier. Their best record to date being a 9th place finish just outside of the playoffs last year. And I'm going to take a moment to pause here. As much as I've been throwing out some banter and as much as I have criticism about the passionate nature of the Bradford fans, there is one significant, important event that needs to be recognized, and there are no jokes when it comes to talking about it. And that was the travesty that occurred at the fire at Valley Parade on May 11th, 1985. It took the lives of 56 spectators. It injured 265. It occurred during a match against Lincoln. And when it comes to those sorts of events and those travesties, always have sympathy that go out to the victims, to the families, to their friends, to those that were in the stadium at the time, to the club. Sympathies for the event that happened. And so you have those from me. As far as performance goes, just want to talk about Bradford this year. Bookie odds had them at 5th. And they've had Wrexham at 1st. And so both clubs sort of in the same position going into an EFL Cup match, placing each other, and that their output so far in their league performances, both fan bases are probably a little bit disappointed and expecting more, but maybe still optimistic that there's lots of runway left in the season. Taking a deeper look then at their performance, including their 6 cup games. So they've got a record of 2 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses. They're 4 places up higher than Wrexham on the table, 1 point higher. Looking at how Bradford got to the second round of the EFL Cup, that was through a defeat of Accrington Stanley away. It was a draw after regular time. They ended up having to go to penalties, and Bradford was able to take it. So that's why they're here. As to their performance in the 5 league games they've had so much, again, I just said 2 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses. First game was a 1-0 loss away in Crawley Town. In that match, they fell behind early. They picked up a red card, and they just weren't able to pull themselves out. Interestingly enough, when you look at the analytics of the expected goals, it says that they were maybe unfortunate, probably should have earned a draw despite having that red card. So maybe unlucky there for Bradford. Second game was a 2-1 win at home versus Colchester, which up until the last game last week for Colchester, you would have thought that's just par for the course, is how the season's playing out for Colchester. But they fell down early. They were able to come back, and the scoreline, according to the statistics, perfectly matched with the outcome. So a well-earned win on that one. The third game, a 1-1 draw with Stockport County away. That was after Stockport was able to get a late goal, and interestingly enough, the expected goals on that one actually had Stockport scoring and defeating Bradford by a score of 3-2. So maybe fortunate in that one to be able to steal a point, I guess, away from Stockport County. Fourth game, a 3-0 loss to Morecambe. A little bit unlucky there as far as the scoreline goes, but they were anticipated to lose 2-1 given the statistics. And then in the fifth game, Crewe Alexandra, 1-0 win at home, and the analytics were identical to the outcome. So at home, no draws and losses at home. They've been victorious at home. No wins away. And that's what matters, I guess, for the EFL Cups, is they're coming to us. And so that'll be interesting to see if they're able to try and sneak something out and do a little bit more than they've been able to do so far. As to the stats for the season, when you end up bringing them up, what do you see from Bradford? Is you see high volume shots, well above average, but a conversion rate that's low. They've been struggling away, obviously. They had that loss to Morecambe, loss to Crawley, draw to Stockport County, draw in the cup that went to penalties for Accrington Stanley. Exactly average in possession. Really, when it comes down to Bradford, they're just not able to score, and they're scoring well below their expected goals per match. You'll see a little bit of a niggling thing when we review their forwards going on and what ended up happening as to who their player selections were to stay with the club, because maybe they picked the wrong guy, and that could have resulted in a different season. But that seems to be the par for the course with Bradford, who just can't seem to get it right despite having all of the resources available to them to be able to climb the ladder, as it were. Last match with Wrexham, January 26, 2008 in League 2. That was the year that Wrexham got relegated to the National League. Bradford finished 10th that year. In the game, it was a 1-1 draw at the Racecourse. And if you're counting backwards in time, that's 5,691 days ago, otherwise known as 15 years and 7 months. Connections to Wrexham, and this one's got a big one, but let's go with the lesser known. Bryce Hosanna had a loan spell in 2020-2021 in Bradford. He played 8 games there, but the obvious one is going to be Hughes and Parkinson. Hughes, the Bradford gaffer, was born in Ruabon, just 9 minutes outside of Wrexham, and Parkinson had a illustrious career managing in Bradford from 2011-2012 to the conclusion of the 2015-2016 season. In that time, Parky had competition, some cup competition success. 2012-2013, he led Bradford to defeats over Arsenal, Aston Villa, on their way to the final, where they lost to Swansea City. They also reached the playoffs that year, where they defeated Burton Albion, and in the semis, and then Northampton Town in the final, and they were able to get their promotion. He took that cup success, and in 2014-2015 in the FA Cup was able to take out Chelsea and then Sunderland before they were knocked out in the 5th round of the FA Cup that year to Reading. 2015-2016, the year following, there was some League One success. They made the playoffs, but they ended up losing to Millwall, and they weren't able to advance. So far this year, as I've said, 12th place, 4 points, 4 places above us in the ladder, with 7 points, one better than Wrexham. Talking about the gaffer then, Mr. Hughes from Ruabon, a striker and midfielder. When he played, he had 16 goals in 72 games for Wales as an international. He actually had his first international goal at the Racecourse in a 1-0 defeat over England in 1984. As far as his club career goes in playing, he played largely for Manchester United, but he did have stops and brief stints in Barcelona and Bayern Munich. When he turned to the managerial time, he was the national coach for Wales from 1999 to 2004, and I believe it was a failed qualification for either UEFA or World Cup that ended that time with Wales. And from that point in time, he coached exclusively in the Premier League, Blackburn, Man City, lots of others. He was at Southampton and made it through December of the 2018-2019 season, or into December, when he ended up being let go as they were struggling to maintain and stay out of relegation. Bradford is his first stint outside of the Premier League as far as management goes. 29 wins, 22 draws, 22 losses, and still where they are in League Two. Toiling with us, I guess it is. Looking at the roster on things going forward with Bradford, a little bit interesting here because they've got one player up front who's played all of their games. They have three center backs who have played all of their games. They have a goalkeeper who's played all of their games. The changes in the midfield is where everything happens, and not just in the personnel that's out there, but also in the formations. So it makes it really hard to put the stats together because you've got such a massive changeover in the middle and people playing up and sort of down the lineup. I will say that they do have a relatively significant loss due to injury. Odur's not going to be in the lineup. I've read that on Twitter. So that's a addition that they had, a 24-year-old winger that they got from Barnsley who's been doing quite well. He's not going to be with them. They do have some additions, and some of them haven't played yet, and I expect, not significantly, they haven't started. And so I expect to see them coming out there. I'm going to just jump right into it. Let's talk about the forwards, and let's talk before we get in there. Their statistics demonstrate that they have strong possession. They're just not finishing. And you've got to look at, well, was there another opportunity? And there was. Jake Young, you might know the name from Swindon. You've seen him put 2 against us. He put 4 in against Crawley. He's the league leader in goals. He's on loan from Bradford to Swindon. And so I don't know how that decision was made, but it seems to be the sort of the curse of Bradford at the moment, that whatever they end up choosing ends up being the wrong decision when it comes to personnel. They've instead of Young, went with Cook, 32-year-old, 519 minutes, 0 goals, 1 assist. Got to be, I think, questioning, maybe screaming that they kept the wrong guy. He's only had, as I see it, 4 shots on goal, and he started every game, so they keep running him out there. Maybe they just don't have an option, maybe sort of kicking themselves. Somebody from Bradford, if you want to let me know what that whole Young versus Cook debate is about, feel free to let me know. They've got some other guys back there that they've played either up, depending on the formation. Walker, Pattison, Odur, who I just said is not going to be there. Pattison, he's been the guy for them. 533 minutes, he's 25. They got him from Harrogate. He's the threat. He's played up. He's played in the midfield, but he's got 2 shots and 2 goals, so maybe fortunate there that the statistics are that everything he's touching is turning to gold, because that conversion rate's not consistently attainable. You're not going to score on absolutely everything you put towards goal. But I would anticipate that we're going to see Cook again. It's just the question of who's necessarily going to be around him. We'll see. Midfielder, you know what? I don't even know what I'm supposed to do with this. Halliday, Smallwood, Oyegoki, Gilead, Smith, Richards, McDonald. I don't know who they're going to end up putting forward. Halliday, there is one I'm going to struggle with the pronunciation. Rydalg. I would anticipate that they're probably going to be seen. They played, as I understand it, in the last cup match against Accrington Stanley. You tend to end up finding a couple of bench players getting the starts, and so I think those 2 might be there. Their defenders, look, they've got 3 constants. Sam Stubbs, Ciaran Kelly, and Matt. So then trying to predict a roster for what we're going to be facing on Tuesday is a difficult task. We know who we're likely going to get in goal. We know at least who one of the forwards is going to be, but the formation that Bradford has used throughout has changed. They've moved midfielders up into an attacking role. One of those midfielders or forwards, Odur, is not going to be available for Bradford. He's dealing with an injury. So a little bit unclear as to what's going to happen sort of midfield range, but let's just go through it. I've already intimated to you that the challenge for Bradford so far has been that they haven't been scoring goals at a rate based on what their run of play is and the number of shots that they've had. It's interesting that they have a player under contract who's out on loan who could have filled that role, but sort of in the vein and of what happens to Bradford is personnel decisions, things that end up happening. They just cannot seem to get it right in Bradford at the moment. Jake Young, 22. You've heard the name. He was with Swindon, or is it with Swindon on loan. He played against us a couple of days ago, put in 2 goals last weekend on Saturday, 4 goals in Crawley. He's leading League 2 in scoring. Could have been with Bradford, but they decided to put him out on loan. So that's a thing. But we know who they're going to get, and that is Cook, 32. That's the alternative, the guy they stayed with, 519 minutes. He's got 0 goals. He does have 1 assist, but I assume that Bradford fans are sort of screaming in disappointment based on how things have gone so far early in the season. And Bradford fans, feel free to throw in a comment down below if I've got that wrong. Defensively, we know who we're going to get or who they've been running out for every start so far. They've had 3 defenders in the center back role, and that's Sam Stubbs, Kieran Kelly, and Matthew Platt. When you look at their stats, it's interesting. Sam Stubbs doesn't have really the analytical data to demonstrate that he's been having a good season so far, but he has won a man of the match competition. So that's intriguing to me, given that not a lot of aerial duels, not a lot of clearances, not a lot of ground duels, not sort of the numbers that you would expect to exist for a center back, at least objectively. But there must be some subjective performance. When you look at Kieran Kelly and Matthew Platt, however, they do have those numbers. They both have good clearances. They both have aerial duels success. They're there in those standard traditional roles. Here's the numbers for Kieran Kelly. You can see that interceptions are there, aerial duels are there, clearances, shot blocks. He's got those numbers. Matthew Platt, take a look at his numbers. Not quite as impressive as Kelly's, but certainly strong. So who else could they put out? It's a cup match. It's not a league match, so a little bit less significance. You'd expect to have some other people get a run. I'm surprised that Ash Taylor, 32 from Kilmarnock, he hasn't had an opportunity to start. He's got minutes, but he's brought in as a center back. You'd expect him to look to bolster those 3. And in addition, they just a week, 10 days ago, ended up bringing in a young guy, Lewis Richards from Wolverhampton. So he's 21 and as a center back, and I'd expect that it's very likely we could end up seeing him. The question will be, can they find the back of the net? There's been some struggles there despite all of those shots. They've got possession. They've got the chances. Just don't seem to be converting, and let's hope that goes for at least another game before they end up finding their legs. Goaltender-wise, it's been Harry Lewis, and it will be Harry Lewis. I'm almost certain of it. He 40% of the games he played last year were clean sheets, save percentage in the 89th percentile. He's a workhorse. Not only did he have a number of league games, he played in their 2 EFL Cup matches, 4 EFL Trophy matches, 1 FA Cup game. They also have Colin Doyle, 38, who could be there. Do they finally give Lewis a break? Is their 7th match the one where they end up tapping Doyle and saying, go and do your thing? I don't know. I could see Lewis just continuing to run out as long as he's an inkling of being healthy, and it seems to be. So that is the roster for what it's worth. I don't know who you would necessarily go with, big and not successful. Feel free to put your comments down below who that would be. The New York Knicks in the NBA, that's maybe the Bradford comparables. As to a food, let's go with one that looks great but just doesn't taste as much, maybe a durian. Smells bad, tastes bad, is bad, but looks good on the shelf. So those are my thoughts. Anyway, the watch party continues to grow and kick off. We're adding countries, we're adding states. More people are hanging in for the duration of it and kind of getting used to the whole idea. It's been a fascinating process, and I'm very, very thankful for the people who've been doing that. I've got a couple of ideas to continue to grow. The big thing, that subscribe button that's down below, give that a knock right now, please. It means a lot. It helps out with the analytics. It helps out with getting to the goals that want to achieve here. I'm talking to a bunch of people about other options and things that hopefully can get added to the channel as we go forward. It's an exciting time for the channel. Big stretch coming up. EFL Cup match Tuesday, but then after that, 5 games in a row in the league against teams that we're either tied with or are below us in the standings. If we're going to be making a push, these next 15 points are going to be big to take a significant portion, a significant bite out of those next 5 games. So let's do that. Thank you for joining. Thanks for signing in. Welcome your thoughts as always. Looking forward to Tuesday, despite it being audio only for the watch party. And just one more thing that's relatively exciting. Terry Fox, if you don't know who he is, he's a very famous Canadian. He ended up attempting to run across the country back in the early 80s, was unsuccessful. Unfortunately, passed away a year after he quit his run because of cancer. There's going to be a Global Cancer Awareness Night that's happening on September 8th at the Turf in Wrexham. There's going to be a number of Canadians there. It is the Terry Fox run that continues to go, is the largest single day fundraiser for cancer research in the world. And Terry Fox happens to be from the town that I'm living in. His hometown is Port Coquitlam, BC. So exceptional event going on at the Turf. Donations for cancer research are going to be available to make there. Starts at 7, September 8th at the Turf. Check it out. This is the Red Horde.